Shalom, I'm Naama Ru. This is my husband, Rabbi David Ru. And we've been talking about the laws of agriculture in the Holy Land. And you want to tell us today where we are with this?
Well, we've reviewed all of the Masechtot of Mishnayot that deal with agricultural laws other than Shemitah, other than the sabbatical year, which will be another series. And all of these things, in one way or other, are supporting people that can't support themselves. We have Leket Shichan Peah, the harvesting parts that are left over for the poor. We have Maserani, poor person's tithe. But Truma and Maser, the parts for the Kohanim and Levim, we're giving food to people that don't have land to grow their own food. And these are people that took care of the spiritual needs in the temple for a certain number of weeks a year, but primarily through their job was being educators, paid educators, and they were supported with these various tithes.
They were unpaid educators who were taking care of the spiritual needs, and they didn't receive an allotment of land for their tribes.
Correct. So they lived from these things primarily. Now, as Jewry went to Babylon in the Babylonian exile and during Talmudic times later, where the Jewish people were not primarily agricultural, the way of giving charity changed. There was what was called the tamchui and the kupa. The tamchui was collected daily. There were gabbai tzedakah, people that were in charge of collecting and distributing charity. They would go around daily collecting from people, primarily food, but also money, in order to support the poor people that were passing through, so to speak. This was a daily collection. It was distributed daily and it was collected daily. The kupa was collected weekly and it was distributed weekly, and this took care of the local poor people that couldn't support themselves completely on their own, and it was known how much we had to give them on a weekly basis so that they could survive, they could get through the next week. Over time, different communities changed in the way they collected and distributed charity, but as the Rambam says, that he's never heard of a Jewish community that doesn't have charitable organizations that help the poor. One of the issues is how much does one have to give for this? We know, we talk about tithe, but in fact there were two tithes, and the pasuk says aser ta'aser, which uses the word tenth twice. So the minimum is 1/10 for poor people, but a more standard amount is considered, or the maximum amount, let us say, but it's better to give that, is 2/10, 1/5 of your income. It's interesting to note that many authorities like Ramesh Feinstein have said there isn't only an obligation to give from your money, there's also give to your time. So we should make sure we donate our time also to people that can't afford the things that we normally charge for. There is a Tosfot that quotes a Mechilta. It's very interesting, that on Aser Taser, that you will surely tithe. The Gemara says that one of the few things you're allowed to test God with is tithes. I'll give this, and we'll see. I'll see whether God will, pay me back, and so on. So a man inherits a huge field. Before his father dies, his father says, "Be very careful in separating your tithes every year." And the harvest from our field every year is 1,000 kor. This is a huge volume of grain. And the first year the man harvests his 1,000 kor, and he thinks, I have to give away 100 kor to the Kohanim, and it's too much. I'll give away 90. And the Tosfot says that the next year he harvested 900. He goes, 900? This is horrible. I can't afford to give away 90 anymore. I'll give away 80. So in a number of years, he harvests 100 kor instead of the 1,000 that he used to harvest. And all his friends throw him a party for him. And they go, what are you throwing me a party for? This is a disaster. It's horrible. And they go, Mazel Tov, you're the Kohen. You used to give away this much to the Kohanim, and that's now what you're receiving. The idea of tithe is something, monetary tithe, is something that's obligatory. It could be taxed. There are many stories about the importance of giving it. There were many ways that different Jewish communities had to make sure people paid the tithe. One of the famous ones was in Eastern Europe, that if someone didn't give enough charity during their lifetime, the Chevra Kadisha, the burial society, had a sliding rate of what they charged. Very poor people were often charged nothing to bury their relatives, and it could go up. And if someone hadn't given enough charity in their lifetime, the Chevra Kadisha would often charge it to the heirs. And there are some very interesting stories on that will be saved for another time.
So, just a little ad hoc conversation. Some of this reminds me of like many cultures in the world. They live in smaller groups. Nobody's left out. Everybody's taken care of. Everybody has a role in society. And like the Jewish people, maybe there were times that we were living that way, but obviously we migrated because of drought or whatnot. We were part of larger societies. And then, we're not a small scale group, even if we live in smaller groups in different places. So you mentioned in a previous conversation in one of our videos, like that it is said that there will always be needy people among us. Can you like explain a little bit more about that?
Well, there's a general concept that the world will never change. And Ein Bein Olam Hazeh L'Mot Mashiach Ela Shibud Malchios Bilvad. The only difference between our time and Messianic times is our enslavement to the non-Jewish rulers. So all the other normal things that we see, that there are wealthy people and there are poor people, there are people that need things, there are people that are capable of giving, that these is part of the basic nature of the world, and the world will continue in that way.
Okay, that's really actually interesting to me. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Hope this is enlightening and inspiring in some way. We're getting close to talking more about the way that we separate the tithe, the process that we do it in, and then we're going to be moving into Shemitah year, which we're getting very close to. And I just found out yesterday that I can actually plant all the way up until Rosh Hashanah, the new year begins. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully not, though.